Mr. Beeline here with your math lesson for today. Today we're talking about factoring trinomials. So all of last week we were working on taking two binomials, multiplying them together, making trinomials. This time we're going to start with the trinomial and work our way backwards by factoring and put it back into that binomial times binomial form. So I've got three cases, three examples. We're going to start with the first one over here. This is the most straightforward one. Okay, so x squared plus 10x plus 16. The trick here is that we're going to be looking for something called the product sum. So the product sum is when we look at two numbers and we go, okay, what do these two numbers multiply into and what do they add into? Because the number that they multiply into is going to be your third term, and the number that they add up to is going to be your second term. Okay, so because we already know we want this to be in binomial times binomial form, we can just put the brackets up right away, and that kind of just gives us a little bit of structure to start our problem. So brackets go up. The other thing we know is because there's no coefficient in front of the x, and most of these problems are going to look like this, where there's no coefficient in front of any of these x's, the only way to get x squared is x times x. Now the next thing we're going to look at is this 16 here. We know that the number 16 is positive, right, because it's plus 16, and there's only two ways to get a positive number when multiplying. The first way is by multiplying a positive by a positive, and then the second way is negative by negative. So to decide which one of those we're working with, we're actually going to look at the second term. Now the second term is positive, so the only way to get that using either both positive or both negative numbers is if you are adding two positive numbers together. So we can just put the plus signs right in. So all we really have to do is figure out what these last two numbers are, and that's not too bad. So let's look at the factor pairs of 16. What two numbers multiply into 16? Well, we've got 1 and 16, 2 and 8, and 4 and 4. Those are the only products that we can work with. So now let's just check and see what they add up to. 1 plus 16 is 17, 2 plus 8 is 10, and 4 plus 4 is 8. So again, all of these numbers we know multiply into 16. Now we just need to find the number that adds up to 10, which you can see is the second row here. So x plus 2 times x plus 8. Now the really nice thing about doing these factor problems, especially on any sort of practice or assessments or anything like that, is that you can just check your answer by foiling this. X times x is x squared, x times 8, 8x, 2 times x, 2x, 2 times 8 is 16, and then if you just combine those like terms that you would have had, 8 and 2, you get 10x. All right, so let's look at this one here. So this time we have a negative number on our second term. That's the only difference. So again, I'm going to put the brackets down. And I'm going to put the x down, because the only way to get x squared is x times x. Now again, we're dealing with a positive product. And again, the only way to get a positive product is by either multiplying a positive by a positive or a negative by a negative. And we know for sure, because of this middle term, that we're going to have some sort of negative number in there, because there's no way to add positive numbers together and end up with a negative. So at least one of these must be negative, right? But because this says either they both have to be positive or both have to be negative, we know that they're both going to be negative. All right, so again, we're going to go with our factor pairs. I'm going to write in shorthand here. Factor pairs of 20. So we have, again, we're dealing with the negative numbers this time. Negative 1 times negative 20. Negative 2 times negative 10. Negative 4 times negative 5. And again, we're just going to find the sums, right? We're just going to put them together and see what we get. So we get negative 21, negative 12, negative 9. So again, all of those numbers multiply into 20. That part's done. Now we just look and say, okay, well, 21, no. 9, no. Negative 12, yes. So we can put the 2 and the 10 in there. Again, the order doesn't matter. If you want to put the 10 first and then the 2, doesn't matter. Okay, last example. This time we have two negatives here. This is probably one of the trickier ones. So again, we're going to look at the product here. How does one get a negative product? Well, they have to multiply by a positive and by a negative. So put our brackets down, put our x in, and we know that one of them has to be positive and one of them has to be negative. But once we do all of this and we find our products, how are we going to know which one should be positive and which one should be negative? Well, to find that out, we're going to look at our second term. And our second term here says when I add those two numbers together, I'm going to end up with a negative number. That means that the bigger number is going to be the negative one, okay? So let's go through it here. So factor pairs of 28. We have 1 and 28. We have 2 and 14, and we have 4 and 7. Okay, so again, because we know that the bigger number must be negative because of this centerpiece, I can put negatives here. And then we're just going to check, just like before. 1 minus 28, minus 27. 2 minus 14, minus 12. 4 minus 7, minus 3. There we go. So we know that x plus 4 times x minus 7 is going to be our answer. In this case, the order matters, right? If this is switched and the 4 is negative and the 7 is positive, then you would have a plus sign here instead, okay? But because it is bigger is negative, we are going to have a minus here. And again, the nice thing about these, if you're not sure which one it should be, which one's positive, which one's negative, you can always just FOIL it back out. All right, that's it for today.